Hey people of the VC, it's Andy Cloudy Mulder. Welcome to part 2 of my 600 subs celebratory Q&A session. Um, First up on this one, Metal Mickey, one of my best Bezzy mates on the VC, someone I chat to regularly through other social media platforms. And you asked two questions. Your first question was, what album do you pick to show someone exactly what heavy metal is? That is a bugger of a question because I don't think you can pick one album to show exactly what heavy metal is. Heavy metal is it's a way of life without sounding too extreme. Um, it has there are many roads that you can go down with heavy metal without treading on the toes of all the different genres. You can stick with one. You can spread it out, and not. I don't think necessarily one album would give you the definitive definition of what heavy metal is. Um, some people like thrash. Some people call heavy metal extreme. To me, it's traditional metal. Um, but you asked for one. I did contemplate going through and showing about 5 or 6 different ones, but you asked for one. So I picked Defenders of the Faith by Judas Priest because I think it doesn't have a little bit of everything. It doesn't have the thrash or whatever, but it has fast songs. It has slightly slower moments. It has great guitar solos and riffs and um, soaring vocals of Rob Halford as well. So if I had to pick one and I could only pick one, I would tell someone maybe start here, tell me what you like, and let's work from there. Question 2 was, do you collect anything else? No, not really. Music has kind of consumed me over the last few years. So um, records and CDs are the only thing I collect, or music related stuff is the only thing I collect. I love music reference books. I mean, I've got the Rock Detector series, A to Z of 80s rock, A to Z of thrash metal, A to Z of power metal, the New Wave of British Heavy Metal Encyclopedia by Macmillan. I love books like that. I love books I can just sit. One of the books that you showed recently, it's not here at the moment, the Contract in Blood, the history of UK thrash metal. I like reading sort of metal biographies and stories. The Metal Blade story, for one. People like Ozzy Osbourne, Lemmy, Nikki Sixx autobiographies. Paul Di'Anno autobiography was horrible. But it's all kind of music related. I collect magazines as well, so I have every issue of Rock Candy, which is a fairly new magazine, but it obviously produced by Rock Candy record label. I really enjoy that. I also collect Iron Fist as well, as you do, Mike. I know, but I think you've got some of the back issues are really hard to come by, and I think you've got far more than me at the moment, which should make it easier for me to find them on eBay now that you're perhaps not looking for them. But it's all music related. So much so that I have to sometimes stop buying records to go out and buy clothes because they fall apart. But yeah, thanks. Metal Mickey, great questions. Blackmore Rules, my big friend from Canada. Can't believe it's probably getting on for 3 years since we met up, Greg. Still have very fond memories of that day. But you asked me an impossible question. You said, who is better, Black Sabbath or Metallica? And I'm going to give you a real on the fence answer. I don't think you can compare them at all. They are as simple as that. They are completely different sounding bands from completely different eras with completely different styles of music. and I love them both. And depending on what mood I'm in, I can reach for one or the other, or I can even play one after the other. It doesn't matter to me. So sorry, you're not going to get a straight answer for that one. Snake bite sounds. You asked me one question, but you wanted 5 answers. You asked who are my top favourite lead guitarists. I kind of find this a little bit difficult because I mentioned on an earlier question that I don't really hold individual band members as being necessarily better than others. I think about bands being the sum of the parts rather than the individuals. But I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to say number 1, Adrian Smith and Dave Murray as one, because they're both lead guitarists in the same band. I'm going to go Tipton Downing as well as my number 2 for 1. I actually like people like Yngwie Malmsteen. I gave him his answer of somebody I thought was a bit of a knob, but still like the music. Yeah, he's takes the levels of guitar wankery quite high, but you know, I like that now and again. Not it wouldn't be everything I listen to, but I just think he's pretty talented. What can I say? Kai Hansen, I'm a massive fan of everything Kai Hansen's done, so he had to be on the list. And number 5, I'll go for Wim Fuego, because he's obviously a genius. So thanks for that. So I couldn't really give it a more definitive answer because I'm not a musician myself, and I don't necessarily understand the technicalities involved in how these guys play. But I just appreciate what they play and the overall sound of the music. Metal Down Under. This question comes all the way from New Zealand, I believe. You asked me, are there any bands that you love but own no physical copies of their music? And I say no, there aren't. All the bands I love, I own something by. I've always I was going to say I always preferred to buy physical media, but there was a period of a few years when I was just downloading anything and everything, and ended up with music on a hard drive that I never really connected with. But pretty much most of the stuff from that time that I did connect with and like, I've probably since picked up on CD. It was at the time before the vinyl revolution, should we say, and it was during when I wasn't really listening to metal. So but yeah, all my favorite bands I own something by, either on CD or record. But thanks for the question. It did take me a while to think about that. I really have to wrap my brains on that one. Spinning the Black Circle, another UK VCer, fairly new. You asked me what was the best hair rock concert I attended in the 80s, where, what artist, and why does it stand out as the best? Well, I never liked hair metal in the 80s. To me, it was anti-metal. It was everything that metal shouldn't be. I've since changed my mind, actually. Certainly in the last couple of years, I've kind of gone back, and there are some great albums out there, and there's also a lot of shite as well. But so I didn't specifically go and see any hair metal bands. The closest answer I could give would be Donington, 1987, my first ever gig. You haven't heard me say that before. Cinderella opened. Now, I don't, strictly speaking, I don't really classify Cinderella as a hair metal band, but they certainly kind of had the image with the big hair and the long scarves, and they certainly weren't a denim and leather band. So yeah, so Cinderella, by virtue of being the opening act at Donington, 1987, and they were awesome. They were excellent. So not only were they probably the only hair metal band I saw, they were by far the best. would you count Bon Jovi as hair metal? I mean, they headlined Donington '87. I certainly enjoy Cinderella more, so there we go. That's my answer. Cinderella, 1987, Donington, Monsters of Rock. The bald metal nerd decided to go a bit cryptic on me. He asked, why purple? And answer is why not, he said. So without taking any strange drugs or too much alcohol, I'm going to presume you mean Deep Purple, even though I don't think you do. And the answer why not is they've never clicked with me. I'm not a fan of Deep Purple. What can I say? Maybe one day. But what can we do? Bitbot Boom. This is a great question. He says his question is real basic, but one that's never been asked. Which image of Maiden's Eddie is your favourite? Bald, long hair, space gear, soldier, etc. This is an incredibly difficult question because there are so many. My favourite era of Eddie pictures has to be the Derek Riggs stuff. There are some cool ones since. I do like the matter of life and death stuff with the soldier Eddie on the tank. Peace of Mind Eddie, that was great. That's kind of my intro with the bald Eddie with the obviously I haven't had his skull removed and screwed back down, but my ultimate Eddie, and I had a picture of this above my bed, big full-size A3 poster, was the Aces High Eddie. Love that picture. Obviously it's just his head, but just the fact that he's in the plane and he's fighting for country. So there we go. But so many I could have picked, John. That was a fantastic question. That could be a thread in itself. Frankie, Frankie's music collection. He asked me what band have I collected the most. Now, I've got most of my records catalogued on a bit of database software, which I may talk about one day in a video one time because I think it's pretty cool. But I've only got vinyl in at the moment. I've started putting CDs in it as well, just to try and get a full catalogue, because I'm starting to forget what CDs I've got. Certainly when I'm out digging and looking in the cheap CDs, and I want to try and avoid picking up duplicates. And the software I use has a cloud storage, which I can check on my mobile, so I can actually see what I've got. But purely vinyl only, my top three. In third place are Anthrax, where I have 27 individual records, whether they be 7-inch single, 10-inch, 12-inch, and albums, and that goes for all of these. Ramones is the second with 28, and Iron Maiden is top with 40. Hold on a second, I'm just going to have to check, because I think Saxon should be quite high, because I've not... what's Saxon? So... Ooh, Saxon. So I've got 27 in my catalogue, but I know I've not added most of the Eagles and Dragons box set that I got last year. So maybe Saxon is second, with Iron Maiden first. So Saxon's probably about 35. I've got quite a few Saxon singles and 12 inches as well. So yeah, kind of a live update on this video. Who knew? Apart from me. Right, that threw me slightly. Yeah, Iron Maiden would be the top answer then, Frankie. Thank you for your question. The Rock Scout. You asked me if I could pick any member of a band, who would you most like to hear a solo project from? again, this was a really tough question. Everybody that I thought of has probably done it already. Even thinking Iron Maiden, Bruce Dickinson has done it, Steve Harris has done it with British Lion, Adrian Smith did it with Adrian Smith Project, and Primal Rebellion, he did that as well. I don't think Dave Murray would necessarily be a good candidate for a solo project. And I thought of others as well, like David Lee Roth, who's done it. It was just everybody I thought of had done it already. And then I thought about, I've always talked about Tigers of Pang Tang, loving the first album and then them going downhill after Jess Cox left. So I thought my answer for this would be Jess Cox, and lo and behold, he did a solo project in 1983 called Third Step. So I picked an artist I would like to hear a solo project from, and I actually have the opportunity to now hear it. So I've kind of, you've kind of given me the impetus to add that album to my wish list, and maybe one day I'll pick it up. Initial impression listening to it on YouTube was okay, not bad, not the same standards as Tigers of Pang Tang, but maybe worth more of a deeper listen. Let's move on. L, you asked me what would be your top 5 albums, top 5 go-to albums, or the ones you play the most. Let's try and go through these quickly. You may not be surprised to see many of these, but Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction, Iron Maiden, Number of the Beast, Anthrax, Spreading the Disease, the aforementioned Tigers of Pang Tang, Wildcat, your album, and by far my favourite Suicidal Tendencies album, How Will I Laugh Tomorrow? Oh, what I can't even smell today. Yeah. Oh, you shouldn't have seen that one. That's one of the next questions. Yeah, so they're my 5 that I listen to quite a lot, I would say. Although I don't have a means of knowing which ones I've listened to the most. Dude, 1973. You said I'm not allowed to divulge this information, so I guess this will be a rhetorical question. What is it like being a secret agent for MI6? Well, Chris, as long as nobody's listening, I'm going to tell you. So, yeah, and that's probably all I can divulge at the moment, but don't tell anybody I said that. Thanks for the question. Thrashing Chris, you're up next. What are my top 5 bands of all time? Well, that would be Iron Maiden, Anthrax, the Ramones, Manic Street Preachers, and The Wedding Present. The last 2 obviously aren't metal, but they're bands that have been with me for decades, and I love to bits. Thank you for your question. Redco Music. What are your top shops to buy music from in your local area? My local area is Edinburgh, and my 3 favourite shops that I say frequent the most, that I go to, but the one I frequent the most is Vinyl Villains. Then the other 2 that I'll go to occasionally will be Record Shack and Unknown Pleasures. 3 good record shops that have reasonably priced and good quality second-hand vinyl. Peter Wilde. I don't think Peter makes videos, but his question intrigued me actually, because he said, ever been to Divinals on Albany Road? And that was it. That was just the question. And I kind of knew instantly that when he meant Albany Road, he meant Albany Road in Cardiff. It's certainly the only one I could think of. And so I grew up in Cardiff, and I had no idea that there was a record shop on Albany Road. The only record shop I frequented in Cardiff at the time was in the city centre, and it was Spillers Records. I don't even know if the Vinyls was around then at that time. But I did I looked on Google Maps, dropped the little man down, had a look around, and the Vinyls is almost directly across the road from a pub called the George. And I did play a couple of Sunday League football games for the George back in probably 87, 88. My dad had a pharmacy shop. He was a pharmacist about a mile or so from there. I grew up about a mile or so from there in the flat above the shop. There was an Indian restaurant just around the corner, I believe, called the Victoria, and I used to go there with the guys I played football with. And bearing in mind I was about 16 at the time, and these guys were all in their 20s and 30s. It was a time when you could, and UK guys will my age will probably remember this, but it was when you could still get Bombay duck as a starter in an Indian restaurant, and they would always order Bacardi and Cokes. But being 16, I was a bit hammered by then, and I was always trying to find ingenious ways where I could actually get rid of the Bacardi and Coke without drinking it. I was 16, for goodness sake. But yes, I used to play football for the George pub opposite. There we go. Maybe not the answer you're looking for, but no, I've never been to the Vinyls on Albany Road, but I have some great memories of that area and some of the establishments around there as a teenager. Thanks for the question. Brought back some really good memories. Darcy, 6 String 9 Lives. Your question, and you asked this question before you did your recent thread, to be fair, but you said if I had to flee my home and was told I could only grab 5 albums, studio or live, doesn't matter, what would those albums be? Darcy recently did a thread where you had to, he actually allowed 10 albums to be grabbed. 5 is even harder. 10 was hard enough. 5 is even harder. I have decided to not pick any of those 10. I did a response video for it. I'm not going to pick any of those 10. I'm going to pick them from a completely different part of my collection. So it's up here above my head is where I keep all my reissues and newer records. I've mentioned before in videos that I keep the 80s stuff down here so as not to contaminate them with all the newness. So the 5 albums that I would grab in this instance from the top shelf, if I could only get to them. You were disappointed, I think, in my thread I didn't show any Saxon, so I've made sure I've grabbed Thunderbolt. This is the Saxon. I thought a bit of High Spirits to sort of, this is kind of real upbeat modern heavy metal from Professor Black. Really good, cool stuff. Massive hard rock band from Australia. Really good high energy stuff. Fantastic live. Seven Sisters, my album of the year from 2018. Love this album. I shouldn't leave home without it. Absolutely fantastic. And last but not least, I need some Ram. And this is Death by Ram. So I could do your thread video about 5 or 6 times over and pick 10 albums each time that I couldn't possibly leave behind. So it's kind of fun to be able to do this again on a mini scale and show you those. There's only 3 people left, so I'm going to go on. So apologies again. This is a long one. I appreciate it if you're staying with me, but I'm going to jump straight into Clarkovision, another Edinburghite from the VC. 3 questions you asked. First question was, when did you first get into Iron Maiden? Was it a specific song you recall that got you interested? Easy Peasy, The Trooper by Iron Maiden. That's actually a second copy I've got. This is the original one that I bought. It's even got the handy little, I don't know, can you see there? See that number 2 with a circle? That was my cataloguing technique when I was a teenager, I'd write number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, and so Iron Maiden was the second single I ever bought. But I remember hearing this on the radio, and it kind of, before that I was listening to things like Adam the Ants, Madness. I kind of liked the poppier Slade songs that were going out at the time, and Status Quo, that kind of stuff. But Iron Maiden, that song put me on the path to heavy metal, and where we are today. Question 2 was, I know you don't like Def Leppard, but you're wondering what put me off them as they came out of the new wave of British heavy metal era. And you didn't want me to bash Steve Clark because you're a big Steve Clark fan. Bev, don't worry, it has nothing to do with Steve Clark. It is purely Joe Elliott's voice. I cannot stand that man's voice. It's like fingernails running down a chalkboard. No, never liked it. Simple as that. But the music, probably great. Although I think once you did point me to an instrumental the Def Leppard did, I didn't particularly enjoy that, to be honest. But there we go. Maybe it's probably just too ingrained in my psyche to like anything that they've done as a result of Mr. Elliott's participation in it. And you asked me a very personal question for number 3. You said, why did I leave South Wales for up here? I say I was brought up in Cardiff. I left to go to college in Liverpool and then stayed up there after I'd graduated, so I was there for about 6 years. I then moved down to Nottingham in England, and I was there for about 12 years. And then Edinburgh was a place that I'd visited. I think I went there on my 30th birthday with my wife, and we really enjoyed it and just thought this is a place we could live. And then about 7 or 8 years later, I had the opportunity to, I was invited to leave my job, and it seemed a good chance to maybe relocate and try something different. So we took the plunge and been up here now for about 12 years or so, and loving every minute of it. It was great. So thanks for that, Bev. Appreciate the question. My final bar. You also asked, so this is Yarko, earliest Iron Maiden memory. That again, see previous question. And do I have the Soundhouse tapes by Iron Maiden? If not, have you ever seen it in real life? I wish. No, never ever seen an original copy. I would obviously I'd love to have one, but I would never pay the prices that they're going for. I don't need it that much. And last but not least, Xavi Apri. I hope that's how you pronounce your channel name. Your question was, do I own records from bands that I like only one album in their entire catalogue? This was difficult. I've grabbed a few quick ones as examples. There aren't that many, to be honest with you. Generally, if I like a band, I tend to like more than one album of theirs. But there's a few examples. So Headpins, absolutely love this first album. Got this as VCLT. Really sort of raw, loud, hard rock. This is Turn It Loud by the Headpins. I found this online. Oh no, I didn't find this online. I found this in one of those digs I was talking about in Atlanta, when I went to record shopping in America, and I saw Headpins. Yep, grabbed that. I like the Headpins. This was a real disappointment. So I would say Turn It Loud is the only album by the Headpins that I actually like. Crash just rocked over a load of records. Example 2 would be a band called the Royal Court of China. This is Geared and Primed. This is actually their second album, I think. Their first album, which is what's it called? It's just self-titled. Is more of an indie alternative rock album, whereas Geared and Primed is certainly more in the heavy metal bracket. I had this one first. Again, I picked this up in the same shop as Headpin, so I kind of had a double blow. This was from Criminal Records in Atlanta, and I saw it and thought, well, I'll grab that because I like the Royal Court of China. And again, it it made me realise that that was the only album I probably need from them, and probably the biggest band of them all, Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction. This is all I need from them. The Lies EP is pretty good, I guess, but I don't really get Use Your Illusion 1 and 2. There's a few good tracks in it, but not great albums in my mind, and I've not heard Chinese Democracy as a result of that. So yeah, a band where I only like really one album in their entire collection. So got to the end. 30 minutes on this one. Thank you for watching. I appreciate every question that I've had so far. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for watching. Please continue to comment and interact with me, because that's what I do this for. Thanks again. Cheers.